I forgot to announce. He's back!
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Wow, it's great to see everybody this morning. Thank you very much for coming out. Before Ann and I left for the Camino, I was asked numerous times, why are you doing this? And more specifically, why are you doing it again? And I never had a good answer. I really didn't know what to say. For those of you who have walked, who have been on a pilgrimage, you know. But to anyone else, it was so hard to say. I didn't know. I didn't know what to say or how to say it. So the title of my talk today is The Call of the Camino. And my points are, first I'm going to talk about that call, and then I'm going to talk about how we can use that in our daily lives, how we can use that to make our lives better. As I walked, I know I must be horrible, annoying to Ann, but I talked to the other pilgrims. We are the slowest pilgrims on the Camino. There's nobody. This is true story. We even got passed by the blind men. Some people walk with sticks. They love walking sticks, and if you're on stone or anything other than mud, you can hear them click, 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 click. Well, they're faster than I am, and I can hear it click, 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 getting closer and closer and closer. And when they get close enough, I just step aside and let them go by. And we were going through a village. I'm not even sure where it was or stuff, but there were the blind people in there, and they were getting instructions for their new dogs. And they had seeing eye dogs, and they were all in training and everything. And we thought, oh, that's wonderful, and we plodded off down the Camino. And a couple of days later, I heard the familiar click, click, click. Judith knows. Click, click, click. And so they got close. I stepped aside. It wasn't a pilgrim with walking sticks. It was the blind guy. And the blind people passed us. So we are the slowest pilgrims. But it gives me an opportunity to walk with and talk with pilgrims. And so I decided I would ask them. One thing that I noticed that was different, and I don't know if it was the time of year or what it was, but last time, almost everybody, it was their first Camino. This time, I'd say half of the people, maybe more, were walking again. And so I would ask them, why are you walking? Why are you walking again? And these are some of the answers that I got. There is an intelligent inner impulse. Another answer, the call is to something greater, even greater than the Camino. A third one was, it is a deeper call. And then a rhetorical question, but what is this deeper call? And where does it originate? And then they answered their own rhetorical question. It comes from the higher self. But the answer that resonated deepest with me is, it is an intuitive pull. And that really struck me. And I realized there's an intuition. There's something, an intuitive pull to go and do this the first time, but then to turn around and do it again. It is an intuitive pull. I looked up in the glossary of the science of mind, intuition. Intuition is God in man, revealing to him the realities of being. Just as instinct guides the animal, so would intuition guide man if he would allow it to operate through him. The ability to know without any process of reasoning. God knows only intuitively. But how do we use this inner knowing? How do we use this inner pull in our lives? I've told this story many times. In fact, I think I've told it so many times. Anne had to remind me of it. We started in France, Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and we went over the Pyrenees, and it was extremely difficult. I was not prepared to go over the Pyrenees. It was really, really a hard day, and we split it into two. We stopped at Orison part way over, and I know going up to Orison, it's steep and it's long. And why am I doing this? Strong pull. This is crazy. This is really, really hard. And then we got into the albergo, and it was great, and we had a great meal, and I met some wonderful pilgrims and felt better about it. And the next day was even worse. We left at a little after 7 in the morning, and we didn't get into Roncevaux until 5:30 at night. And there's no stop for lunch. There's no soaking your feet in a cool pool. It was walking the whole time, albeit at our snail's pace. We walked into the monastery, and it's big. It's the size of this building, but it's 3 stories, and bunk bed. I mean, it's filled with bunk beds. I think it holds in that main one 360 beds. And then there's an overflow in the older part of the monastery, and they don't have bunk beds, but they've just got mats that are rolled out on the floor, and you just curl up with another 40 or 50 or 60 of your closest friends. And at least in the newer part, you have 2 toilets and 2 showers for about every 40 or 60 people. The old part, that had 2 for everybody. But we're experienced pilgrims by now. We're pros. We're no rookies. We know what to do. You pop in, take off your shoes, put your, pack over here. You do this. Get out your credentials. You walk in, and I walked in all proud of myself, knowing what I'm doing. And she says, "Oh, no lo siento, completo." What? Completo. That means we're full. Oh no. Sí, completo. What about the overflow? Completo. 2 more villages before we found a place. I was really concerned about not finding a place. And last time, and I've shared this with everybody, how we grew to trust in God, to trust the Camino. The Camino will provide, or God will provide. Well, it's not that I'm second guessing God, but I'll tell you, this is not looking real great. And then Anne reminded me of this story, and it's this, the story, the guy in the flood, and first of all, he gets the notification, flood's coming, and they get an evacuation notice, and oh no, God will save me. Well, the flood comes, and it's filling his house quick, and in comes a motorboat, and it pulls in. We'll save you. No, God will save me. And the flood keeps getting higher and higher. Next thing, he's on his roof up there, and in comes whoop, 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 the helicopter, and they drop no, God will save me. Well, he drowns, and he shows up at the pearly gates, and he says to St. Peter, he says, "I don't understand it." He says, "I thought God was going to save me." And St. Peter says, "Listen, he gave you the evacuation notice, he gave you the rowboat to get a motorboat to get out of there, and he sent a helicopter for you. What more can he do?" And she said, last time, yeah, we had things, but we've got other things that we can do now. A thing called a telephone. I can call ahead and see where there are places to stay, and we can kind of plan around that a little bit. So, much to my chagrin, because I felt like I was giving up control or something, I don't know, we joined the horde of those calling ahead and finding a place in advance. I did notice with Ann calling, we seem to stay in a lot nicer places. But that's a subject for a whole nother talk. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Since this inner self is in continuous connection with the outer self, it can cause a flow of intelligence, stimulating the mind to purposefulness, to creative genius, to executive ability. There is something in the most practical person that longs for this still, silent presence. When we spend our entire time on objective things, never getting back to the inner self, we are piling brick upon brick, sooner or later to see them fall about us in ruin. The toiler dies in a day unless the dreamer refreshes and invigorates him with that divine influx which comes from the inner self that never tires, fed by the deep, eternal fires." We can take that next step in our lives, in our creativity, in our execution of who we are as human beings, when we can pause and listen to that still small voice, to that inner voice, to that inner pull, to that part of us that is there. So, what did the still small voice, that inner knowingness, that inner pull have to say? As I walked, I became aware that I have been on the outside of the arena of social activism, if that's really the right word, I don't know. I haven't wanted to get into that arena because I'm afraid that I will offend somebody, that what I say may be in opposition to someone else's beliefs, and so it's easier not to. And as I walked, I came to the conclusion that that isn't who I am. That I do feel that there is a pull to do what is in my heart I know to be right. And as things work out for me, at least, when I get those kinds of feelings, that intuition, that inner pull, whatever it is, I often get reinforcements for it. And as soon as we got back, I came back and there was a quote that just jumped out at me. And this was Reverend Dr. William Barber, who I believe is a pretty fundamentalist Christian preacher, and he was addressing a group of Christian leaders. And he wrote, "Not saying something is not an option. You can't see injustice and say nothing. You can't see abuse of human beings because of their race, their creed, their sexuality, and not say something. The prophetic call demands that we say something. How will the haters learn that there is a better way unless they learn of God's love?" And when I read that, I really decided that it is important for me to be more engaged in social issues, particularly where there are people being harmed and being hurt. Now, what that's going to look like and what it's going to be, I'm not going to be against anything. I'm going to be for something that I know to be true, to be right. I'm going to talk about our shared values and principles. And in the coming weeks, I'll be talking about those values and what they are and how important it is that we as humans embrace those. And they're the values that are common to all of us, regardless of the religions. We look at all 9 of our candles at the things, at that golden thread that's common to most organized religions. We can never be accused of that. The organized part, anyway. And we will continue to embrace our shared values and principles. I'm changing my voice all around. Our Practitioner 2 students just turned in their term papers, and they are completing now 2.5 years of study, of work, papers, inner work, in order to serve you, in order to be better servants to you. And I just want to honor all of the hard work that they have done, that they continue to do, and the progress that they have made. And these term papers are just, they're awesome. What a group. And they are joining our practitioner corps, many of whom have been doing this for 12, 14, 15 years or more. They're committed to serving you. And I think it's important that we recognize and we honor our practitioners and our soon practitioners to be. Once again, thinking that I'm on the right track, I opened one of the term papers and it was all about intuition. This is a quote from this term paper. Getting the certificate isn't the end. It is a whole new beginning. It doesn't signify finished spiritual growth. It is a commitment to constantly strive for more and more spiritual growth. It is vital to keep finding new ways to grow and advance in all avenues, and to always remember along every step of the way to listen to that intuitive voice. We're out of time. In conclusion, I'll wrap it up with a story, and if you don't remember anything else about today's talk, I want you to remember this final story. I want to put the setting because it's almost 100 years old. This is in the late 1920s, early 1930s. Our movement was in its infancy. A lot of things hadn't been figured out yet. Ernest Holmes was giving lectures at the Ebell Theater in Los Angeles. He was drawing 5,000 people a Sunday, packed houses. But this was not a time like it is now. We think we have so many problems, but you know, they had problems back then too. And in many cases, their problems were their unawareness, and they weren't even aware of how racist they were, how sexist they were, how misogynistic they could be. And we forget that today. We forget that we are much more understanding and much more forgiving and much more inclusive than we were at that time. It came to Ernest Holmes' attention that there were a great number of non-Caucasians attending these lectures, and that perhaps he should do something about that. Now, I don't know whether it was because it was people with darker skin, or whether they were Asians or African American. I don't know what it was, but there were too many non-Caucasians attending these lectures. The next Sunday, Dr. Holmes got up in front of the congregation, and he stood behind his lectern. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. And it got quiet, and everybody looked at him, and they're waiting for him to say something. Finally, he said this: I have been told that too many non-Caucasians attend these lectures. True, there are Caucasians and non-Caucasians in this congregation, but this we must affirm. We are all children of one living God, one life that permeates all without exception, one intelligence that governs all. And most important, every man and woman who abides in the universe is a significant identity in the one universal consciousness. Our doors will forever be open to all. Whoever you are, be proud. You are a divine idea in the mind of God. And so it is with our awareness that each and every one of us are magnificent ideas in the mind of God. And I invite my colleagues, the practitioners, to join me in serving each and every one of you, in serving you with prayer, in holding everyone in love and light, and in an awareness that as we go through this earthly experience, as we walk this Camino of life, yes, there are trials, there are tribulations, there are difficulties. Our feet get sore, our ankles get sore, our back is sore, but we continue to carry our pack. We continue to move forward. We continue to walk because we know that each of us are that divine idea in the mind of God. And regardless of our political beliefs or our religious beliefs or any of the other outside outpicturings of the thoughts of man, more importantly is the thought in the mind of God, and that is that we are all perfect children in the eyes of God. And so all of the things that look like troubles can fall away, because behind these outpicturing, behind these things that are outside, there is that universal truth. And that is that our lives are absolutely perfect in every way. And when we can step by, step aside, open ourselves up to that still small voice, to open ourselves up to that intuitive pull, our lives become richer. They become fuller. We become more inclusive as people. We become more loving, and our lives are made better for it. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for our awareness of our oneness. We give thanks for our awareness of the power and the presence of the Almighty in our lives. And so now we just step back. We allow that inner impulse to pull us. We allow God to drive the bus. We just sit back and enjoy it. We give thanks, and so it is.